Well, good morning, everybody. It's really an honor to be here. I didn't tell Jamie, but with the tone of today's activities and honoring firefighter, I'm also, what Jamie didn't say, I'm also a proud father of a firefighter. My son's a firefighter for the state of Georgia, has earned the Medal of Valor for the state of Georgia, so I could not be more proud of him. Throughout our history, certain images have ingrained in our minds the flag raising at Iwo Jima, the day President Kennedy was killed, Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon, President Reagan telling the Soviets to tear down this wall. But for all of us, the events of September 11, 2001 will forever live in our memories. We shall never forget the images of planes flying into the World Trade Center, or the smoke rising from the Pentagon. We shall never forget the courage and compassion of the New York City firemen and other men and women racing into burning buildings to save the innocent or those heroes who died in the Pennsylvania field. The days following the attack brought even more memories. We shall never forget the image of the boy leaving flowers outside the American Embassy in Moscow. We shall never forget the candlelight vigils held in India and Bangladesh. Thousands of Germans marching at Brandenburg Gate. 100,000 Canadians gathered in Ottawa. Jordanian women gathered to pray, all of them sharing in our sorrow. There is no doubt that the horrific acts of the few were surpassed by the heroic acts of many. All sailors and Marines and soldiers and airmen and Coast Guardsmen continue to perform daily acts of heroism in response to these attacks. But the legacy of that September day lies in the worldwide embrace of freedom that followed. So today we recall and we celebrate what we learned about ourselves on September 11, 2001. We recall and celebrate how we acted that day. We remember, once again, how ordinary human beings living their ordinary lives reacted with extraordinary heroism when, without warning and in an instant, they were thrown face to face with the most fundamental questions of human existence. On September 11th, 12 years ago, we saw ordinary people choose duty in the face of death, as the security guards in the Trade Center continued to help people even as the buildings were collapsing around them. On September 11th, we saw loyalty to friends overwhelm all sense of danger as New York City firefighters searched tirelessly for their own. 12 years ago on September 11th, we saw ordinary people choose self-sacrifice for the good of strangers, as the passengers on the plane over Pennsylvania refused to allow the hijackers to succeed. On September 11, 2001, we saw ordinary people choosing to spend their final moments expressing their love to their families. This week, millions of people from nations around the world stand united behind one ideal: that the destructive agendas of radical extremists shall never eclipse the light of liberty. So we gather here to remember, to console, and to pray. To remember comrades and colleagues, friends and family members, those lost to us on September 11th. We remember them as heroes, and we are right to do so. They died because, in words of justification offered by their attackers, because they were Americans. They died then because of how they lived, as free men and women, proud of their freedom, proud of their country, proud of their country's cause, the cause of human freedom. Those who worked in the Pentagon on 9/11, whether civilians or in uniform, side by side, they sought not to rule but to serve. They sought not to oppress but to liberate. They sought not to take lives but to protect them. They sought not to preempt God, but to see to it his creatures lived as he intended, in the light and dignity of human freedom. So our task is then to remember the fallen as they were, as they would have wanted to be remembered, living in freedom, blessed by it, proud by it, and willing, like so many others before them and like so many today, to die for it. And to remember them as believers in the heroic ideal for which our nation stands, the ideal of service to country and service to others. Beyond all this, their deaths remind us of a new kind of evil, the evil of a threat and a menace to which this nation and the world is now fully awakened. As General Casey said when he took the reins as our former Chief of Staff of the Army, he said, "We are locked in a war against global extremist network that is fixed on defeating the United States and destroying our way of life. The foe will not go away, nor will they give up easily, and the next decade will likely be one of persistent conflict. At stake are the powers of our values and our civilization, exemplified by the promise of America to confront and defeat the menace of extremist terrorists. At stake is whether the authority of those who treasure the rights of free individuals will stand firm against the ruthless and pitiless men who wantonly slay the defenseless. At stake is whether the future will be framed by the individual freedoms we hold so dear or dominated by the demented form of extremism. At stake is whether we will continue to expand freedom, opportunity, and decency for those who thirst for it, or let the darkness of extremists and terror." The events of 9/11 and the 12 years afterwards have created a new proud generation, the 9/11 generation, a generation that saw their nation attack and eternalize the fact that a very way of life is now threatened because of this. Each came from a different background, drawn to serve their country and their people and our way of life for many different reasons. But they are all bound together by this shared bond. Unique within this generation are those who have traveled overseas, both in uniform and civilian, to confront this menace face to face in foreign lands. They have seen the terror up close and personal. They've lost brothers and sisters, friends dearer than even their own family. Brothers and sisters who have paid the ultimate price and sacrifice for our country. They are living history, the history of war and the ethics of war. The war of terror remains in their face every day. But as I've watched them and I've fought with them over these past years, they have never quenched, nor wavered, nor faltered. They quietly count themselves among the generations that have gone before them, placing themselves in the gap between the evil and our way of life. They have seen the smiles on Iraqis and Afghans with the opportunity to make a life for themselves, of children receiving 21st century medical care or going to school for the first time in their lives. They have seen more in the last few years than many will in a lifetime. And because of this, they will know some of life's hardest truths and some of its purest devotions. They will never have to guess. History will gloriously record their service and their sacrifice to their country. And many of you have stood in their ranks, or kissed them goodbye or welcomed them home. But I want to tell you what an honor it is to be here among you all, and thank you for your support over so many years. And to the families and friends of our fallen fellow Americans of 9/11 and the 12 years afterwards, we extend today our deepest sympathy and condolences. We pray that God will give some share of that peace that now belongs to those we lost, to those who knew and loved more in this life. But as we remember together, we are also thankful for their lives, thankful for the time that we had with them, and proud too, as proud as they were, that they lived their lives as Americans. We are mindful too and resolute that their deaths, like their lives, shall have meaning, and that the noble birth of human freedom, a birthright that was theirs as Americans for which they died, will always be ours, and also of our children's. And through our effort and example, one day, the birthright of every man, woman, and child on earth. For years to come, Americans will gather on this day to memorialize the loss and the tragic events of 9/11. Americans will gather and recall the horrors inflicted by those who see us in our way of life. Years from now, when you and I are past our primes, Americans will come together and remind themselves of the evil that still exists in our world today. But above all this, Americans will remember the true legacy of 9/11. That self-sacrifice exists in this nation despite what our enemies and detractors say. That values such as duty and honor and country still hold strong places in our national conscience. And that the love of family, of country, of humankind, and of God remain foremost in our minds, but more importantly in our hearts. This is the true lesson and legacy of September 11th. We all are duty-bound to remember it. So let us resolve again to stand together as we have before, to recommit ourselves to the principles that have made our nation free and to the values that make our military what it is today. I was in the Pentagon the morning of 9/11, and hanging in my office is a picture of the Pentagon early that morning that my close friend and colleague took with his personal camera. It was taken right after the building collapsed. And right where the building collapsed is a picture of the American flag in a Marine General's office. And right inside the office, right at the edge of the collapse, the American flag still stands. You couldn't find it unless you looked for it, but when you see it, it's indelibly there. Unbeknownst to my friend when he took the picture is a ray of sunlight shining on our nation's flag still standing. It was a bright day that day, but the smoke from the fire obscured the sides and tops of the Pentagon where the plane went in. But when he took the picture, for some reason the smoke cleared for a second, and the sun shone on our country's symbol of hope, of strength, solidarity, and honor. The American flag still standing at the edge of the collapsed building in that Marine General's office. It's amazing. And the next time you're up at West Point, let me show it to you. Wherever I'm stationed, I bring it with me to remember. To remember the tremendous sacrifice that was given that day. To remember our nation's treasure, our very sons and daughters that were forever lost that day. To remember the greatness of our nation, and not only how she responded on 9/11, but over the last 12 years. To remember this incredible 9/11 generation that has shouldered the security of our nation again and again and again, and gladly continues to do so. And mostly to remember God's grace and His sovereignty. And may He always shed His grace on thee. Thank you.